So how does bankruptcy actually work? What actually happens? So in the process is pretty, it's complicated, but it's simple. How's that for an attorney answer? So here's what happens. You come in to meet with us, and we decide whether a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 is going to be best for you. Now, you've heard of Chapter 11s, and you've heard of, Chapter 10s, and there's all these other things, and there's Chapter 5. Don't worry about those. Most consumers, more than 90%, I would dare say, of consumers, households out there are going to be in either a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. Now, I've explained before in shorter videos that Chapter 7 is a liquidation bankruptcy and a Chapter 13 is a reorganization. Chapter 7 you're going to be in and out of in a matter of months. Chapter 13 you're going to be in that for 3 to 5 years. You have to qualify to do a Chapter 7, meaning based on your household size and the state you're in, and I'm in Utah, I'm a Utah bankruptcy attorney, so there's going to be limits. You can only make so much money and still qualify. It's a thing called the means test. So if your income exceeds the means test amount, you may not be able to qualify for a Chapter 7. You're going to be in a Chapter 13. Other factors are going to be home equity and some of those other kind of things, whether we're going to be looking at a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So here's typically you come in and you meet with us and we kind of look at your assets and what's going on. And then we decide we're going to move forward. The next thing is we've got to get all of your information. I've got to know all of your debts, all your income sources. I'm going to need bank statements, pay stubs, investment statements, a list of all of the assets that you own. I get a lot of people that will give me a list of their assets, and I'm looking across at them, and they have their clothes on, but they haven't indicated in their paperwork they have any clothing. So you got to be really particular and pretty detailed in listing your assets. So we get all of that, and then we start preparing statements and schedules. So this is the same whether there's a 7 or a 13. We prepare statements and schedules, which basically list out and categorizes all of your debt and all of your assets and whether or not assets are exempt. So let's talk about that a little bit. So there are some assets that are exempt. What exempt means is that no creditor can touch it, either in a lawsuit situation or in a bankruptcy situation. The short way to summarize that is the exempt assets are those assets that the Utah legislature has decided, or Congress, the Utah legislature, if we're filing in Utah, has decided you just get a keep because you kind of need them to function. The examples, if you look in any, most people's homes are going to have a couch, some chairs, they're going to have some tables and dining room chairs, they're going to have their everyday kitchen utensils, their bait pots and pans and plates and bowls. They're going to have a stove, a range, an oven, a microwave. They're going to have a refrigerator and a washer and a dryer. And they're going to have, mixers and all of that kind of stuff. You're going to have beds and your bedding, your blankets and quilts and sheets and pillows. You're going to have your just everyday clothes, right? You're going to have all of that. You're going to have just those things that you kind of need. And in Utah, there's a couple unique ones. Utah, you can keep 3 guns. Utah, you also get to keep up to a year's supply of food. So you don't lose your food storage if you file a bankruptcy. So you can keep up to a year's supply of food. Other states have different things. Utah also has a homestead exemption. It's a limited homestead exemption. You get to keep a certain amount of equity in your home. Each party, each spouse has that amount that they can claim. So we get all of this data crafted and into stuff, and then we list your assets and we claim them as exempt. Now your debts, we're going to list those in 3 different categories. One is your secured creditors. Your secured creditors are those creditors that we can tie to a specific piece of property. The easy examples are a home loan or a car loan. We know that home loan goes to that piece of property. We know this car loan goes with this car. Other examples would be a furniture loan from R.C. Willey or the Boulevard Home Furniture or someplace like that, where we know that couch is being paid for by this loan. It's a secured creditor. And then those things are collateral. With secured creditors, we get to do one of 3 things. Number 1, we can choose to negotiate a reaffirmation agreement where we say, you know what, hey, bank, hey, credit, furniture store, we want to keep that asset. So we're going to keep paying for that. And we want to try and negotiate, we're going to just do that on the same terms as we've been paying it all along. Second thing that can happen, we can surrender it. I recently had some people surrender a motorhome. The motorhome was worth half what they owed on it. Their health was such that they weren't going to be able to travel anymore. And they had this massive payment on a motorhome that they couldn't use. They owed more than it was worth. We got a hold of the bank in their bankruptcy and said, come get it. Here's the keys. We'd be glad to deliver it to you, but it was at a distance. Their health wouldn't let them, so the bank sent some people and picked up that motorhome and drove it off. That's what can happen there. The last thing is a creditor can choose to abandon the debt. This would be an example. Let's say you're buying a washing machine on a loan from a furniture store, and you've been using that washing machine for a year, and you've got 4 kids and 3 dogs. The money that it's going to cost that furniture store to repossess that washing machine, rehab it, clean it up, fix it up, and sell it, they're not going to make any money on that. So they will abandon the asset. They'll a lot of times just send me an email saying, we're going to abandon it, don't worry about it, and they'll choose to be treated like an unsecured creditor. Second category of creditors is what we refer to as priority unsecured. Priority unsecured creditors are those creditors that the government has just said, you know what, you're going to pay these guys. Most student loans fall into that. Now, there are some exceptions on student loans. Child support and alimony, you're paying that regardless. You're never going to get out of that if you owe it. Might go to jail if you don't pay it, so pay it. So those are priority unsecured. And almost all taxes are priority unsecured. The government's writing the rules, they're going to make you pay them. Now, you can work out payment plans with them and some of that kind of stuff, and I would refer you to tax professionals to get that help on dealing with your taxes. So that brings us to the third category of debt, which is your unsecured creditors. Your unsecured creditors, your credit cards, your personal loans, signature loans, old medical bills, old rent bills, old phone bill from 2 cell phone companies ago, whatever it is, right? So those other people. Now, what happens in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy is there's an individual that's appointed by the court to be the bankruptcy trustee. It's what they do for a living. Their job is to see, are there enough exempt assets they can seize and sell to make a dent in an efficient way in your unsecured creditors. Now, a very common non-exempt asset is someone's tax return. I had someone get an $1,100 tax return recently. That's been turned over to the trustee, and that's going to be paid out in some percentage shares to that particular client of mine's unsecured creditor. So that's something that's there too, is a non-exempt asset. So the bankruptcy trustee is going to do that, see who makes a claim for those monies, and pay it out on a pro rata basis. That's kind of how Chapter 7 works. And then after a few months after you get a discharge. Now, usually there's only one formal proceeding in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that's called a 341 meeting or a meeting of creditors. 341 is a code section of the bankruptcy code that establishes how this meeting is going to work. In the 341 meeting, the bankruptcy trustee is there, and he's going to ask questions about your statements and schedules, maybe clarifying questions. Maybe he's done some research and realized you forgot to list a bank account. And so he's going to issue trustees' directives to make amendments to your statements and schedules and to fix things. And then he may even do some stuff if he feels he's lied to you or you haven't been fully open about disclosing things. He may file paperwork to deny a discharge, which is the discharge is that magical document at the end of a successful Chapter 7 bankruptcy case that says all the rest of your debt is wiped out and you do not have to pay it. So you want to make sure you're honest and open about that stuff at the beginning so you don't get the trustees dire up and have him start filing things or her start filing things to make it so you cannot get your discharge. Now let's look at a Chapter 13. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you create what's called a Chapter 13 plan. And that plan is basically where you're going to pay off your unsecured creditors over a time period. And with this plan that meets the rules, and there's limits on income and expenses depending on your household size, we've got to craft it specially to make sure it complies with all of the rules. And then over that 3 to 5 year time period, at least a portion of your unsecured creditors are going to get paid. Generally, it's going to be at least the value of your non-exempt assets. Okay, so if you've got, maybe let's look at a house, right? Let's say you have $150,000 of equity in your house and you're married. You can only claim about $86,000 as exempt. So you've got this other $70,000. You're going to pay your unsecured creditors, basically buy that equity from them over that 3 to 5 year time period. That's, again, broad strokes. Every situation is different. That's generally how it's looked at, is you're going to at least pay that kind of a dollar amount. So they're getting what they would have gotten had you liquidated everything. So pretty good detailed overview of bankruptcy in about 10 minutes. My name is Travis Christiansen. If you've got questions, reach out to us, greaterzionlaw.com. We'd be happy to answer those questions.